Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Dylan EDU, and Happy New Year. Before the new year began, I sent out a Google form to most of you guys. I made a video about it and posted about it to try and get some of your guys' predictions about what you guys are expecting for politics in 2026. So, this video is going to be just going over your predictions, talking about them, and to talk about them with me, I have the great Canadian Bagel. So, Bagel, he is a YouTube channel as well, a lot bigger than mine, that I'm going to link in the description. And he also is running a poll. Do you want to talk about that real quick, Bagel?
Yeah, so I'm running a poll for Canadian politics. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I do political analysis and also I do my own polling, like proper scientific polling. My poll, I'm going to be covering Canada Federal, the BC, Quebec, and Alberta provincial data, and also the BC Conservative and Federal NDP leadership races, and I'll be publishing those polls over the next couple weeks or so. And yeah, if you want to participate, go. There's going to be in the link in the description or a pinned comment or something like that. It'll be there, and you can go in. It is anonymous, in case that is a concern for anyone.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think we might as well just get right into it. So our first question on the Google form was, when will the next Canadian election take place? And the results were 48.5% said that the election would take place this year in spring or summer of 2026. 9.1% said fall of 2026. And then the rest of everyone said either winter, spring 2027 or sometime after then. So overall, I think it's about what I was expecting for results. Personally, I don't really know what to expect because there's a lot of variables about whether we have an election or not. But yeah, what do you think, Bagel?
I would say, so there's obviously tons of variables on this, but I don't think the one of these answers, I think that is the wrong answer. I think it is 2027. In my mind, if the election isn't this year, it's probably going to not be next year. I think 2028 would be the next time it would be an election. So 2026 or 2028 would be the two times I really see happening. 2028 would be trying to time it with the U.S. election. Might be 2029 in that case as well. And if it's this year,
trying to run the Conservatives as J.D. Vance's pick for Canada.
Yeah, kind of like that. And if it's this year, it's going to be trying to either time it before or after the USMCA negotiations, depending on how Carney thinks that's going to go. If he thinks they're going to be a blowout and it's going to be bad for Canada, he's going to try to do it beforehand. And he thinks it's going to be crushing victory, like Carney's going to get the best trade deal in the world, the U.S. is going to give everything, including the car, then he might wait until the fall. But yeah, I don't.
It ultimately. Sorry, you finished.
I don't. I don't think it's going to be next year, and I don't think after this year it's going to be somehow synced up to the U.S. election. It's just not clear if it's going to be slightly before or slightly after.
So the way I'm looking at this is it's whether the opposition gets to pick when the election happens or if Carney gets to pick. Because if Carney gets to pick, then 100% it's synced around the U.S. in one way or another. Like, again, trying to tie them to J.D. Vance, or who's presumably the 2028 nominee for the GOP. Or also, again, the USMCA. There's also that variable of what if Carney loses but gets his elbows up victory, I stood up to Trump, which I don't think would be easy to sell in the media, but it is the Canadian media, so you never know. Ultimately, I think if the opposition is going to trigger it because Carney doesn't get his four crossers, which we're going to talk about later, then it can happen anytime. But if it's going to be Mark Carney calling a snap election, then probably synced around the U.S.
My one... Yeah. So, okay, how do I want to phrase this? I don't think the opposition will trigger a snap election unless it's this year. This is the only year the opposition might do a snap election, and if it happens, it's going to be synced up with the new NDP leader probably this spring. And if it doesn't happen then, I don't think the opposition's going to do it. Because that's the best timing for the NDP. They have nothing to lose for going to another election really quickly. They'll be right off the leadership race, right with a brand new leader. They might push off to fall. That's a little less likely, but they definitely won't be doing it. If they don't do it this year, they're not going to do it. They're not going to back it. And I think
I'd
it's
agree with
a
that,
reasonably high likelihood the NDP never backs it. They might kind of weasel their way out of supporting Carney with stuff like making the confidence votes free votes or something like that, or people are just conveniently not there. But I don't think, if it's not this year, they won't do it.
Again, it comes down to who becomes their leader. In hindsight, this was a very poor question to put first because this relies on a lot of the other variables that we're going to talk about. But I think if the NDP picks someone who's really like, yeah, I hate Carney too, like we're taking him down, someone with maybe a bit more of a anti-Carney attitude than Don Davies, then 100% they're going to be gutting for an election if they have the polling to back it. Because all they want is that party status at this point. Then they get their funding and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting. So I think that's all we can really say to that. This is going to be a reoccurring thing throughout this video. Just how whether certain events will affect an election occurring. But yeah. Anything else you want to say, or should I move on to the next thing?
Let's move on.
Okay, perfect. So our next question was, will Pierre Poilievre be leading the Conservative Party at the end of 2026? Unsurprisingly, 78.8% said yes, and 21.2% said no. So I'll let you go first.
Those numbers, I think, are pretty reasonable. I think that almost breaks down to my mental picture of what the odds are that there's a new election this year and the Conservatives lose the election. Because I don't think I don't think Poilievre will survive a second election loss. I don't think he's going to get a third chance. But I don't personally think there's a super high chance of an election this year and also the Conservatives losing. I'd say it's probably like a 40% chance of an election this year and 50-50 on who wins kind of deal.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
This seems like pretty reasonable. I don't think there's really any chance the Poilievre gets too little support in the leadership review to leave, but that's a future question, so I'll pin that for now.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, you and me are both going to be delegates, so we can obviously, I think both of us have a bit of anecdotal evidence for what we think is going to happen. But I'd be shocked if he was below 80%. I know that you're forecasting a little bit lower, and that's the next question, so I shouldn't have brought that up. But I think he still has the support of caucus, which is huge. Definitely you're running a caucus of 142 MPs. There's going to be some people who aren't happy all the time. That's politics. Overwhelmingly, he still has the support of caucus, especially the new MPs, I'm pretty sure. So again, I don't really see how he goes, but it's always possible.
I think at this stage, unless Poilievre himself quits or somehow he just flops the leadership review and is kind of forced out because of how bad the review went, I don't really see how he ceases to be leader outside of another election loss. So there's not, because I rephrase this. Aaron O'Toole obviously was kicked out by a coup, effectively, from the party using the Reform Act from the caucus. But to do that, you actually need someone quite strong and quite significant in the party who's able to rally the different factions in the party, because the party is not one cohesive, united blob. The 140 people in it, in the caucus, are going to have different viewpoints, are going to have different sub-factions, are going to have different organizations in them. And you have to get someone who can rally, I think it's 2/3 of all of them to agree to remove the leader. And I don't really see anyone in the caucus who has the notoriety or interest to do that. So the only really threats Poilievre has are the leadership review and if another election happens and he loses.
Is it 2/3 or a majority for the Reform Act?
I don't remember.
I want to say it's a majority, but regardless, I think rallying a majority is still difficult when you have to remember Pierre hit the leadership race with over half of caucus backing him.
Yeah.
Granted, a lot of caucus members who backed Aaron O'Toole also signed the letter to invoke the Reform Act. So politics isn't always a game of loyalty. But I think, again, caucus doesn't see a reason to boot Pierre out. I think for that to happen, there'd have to be someone in caucus who wants his job. And we haven't really seen any indication of people positioning for it within caucus yet.
Yeah.
So on this topic, our next question was what our prediction of Poilievre's percent in this review would be. And there were a lot of varied responses. And the way I categorized it was lowest, high, median, mean, and mode. So the lowest guess for how he would do was 40%. The highest guess was 97%. Both of those are very extreme numbers, in my opinion, with the mean guess being 75%. Median guess was 77.75, and the most guessed numbers, just in terms of raw numbers, was 75, 80, and 84. So I think, again, our extremes are 40 and 97. Neither of those are going to happen. Personally, I'm thinking he's going to be a little bit above 75. I'd be shocked if he was over 85. That would be a really good result. I'm thinking, like, if I had to guess right now a specific number, I'd say 82. But that's just me.
So, my 2 cents on this is it depends a little bit on who shows up for the convention. So, the actual pool of members in the Conservative Party, as polled by people like Abacus, about 70% approve of Poilievre, of current members of the party. So if there was a 100% show up rate, every single person in the party showed up to the convention and voted, which is obviously not happening. That's not how the party works. That can't happen. But if they did happen, you would expect it to be 70%. But obviously, you only have 10 people per riding, and many of those ridings are not going to fill a full slate. The riding I'm from is not filling a full slate. It's not happening. And of those who even signed up, I'm not even sure if they're going to come. Didn't happen last time. Some people didn't show up. So that leads to an interesting question. Who does show up? Who's motivated to show up? And depending on how you want to answer that question, it's going to skew how this is going to go. My gut feeling is it's not going to be super biased. So it's going to be like 70% plus or minus 5. But there is some indication, because especially location of Calgary might be hard for Maritimers and Quebecers and Ontarians to come who have a lower approval rating of Poilievre than people in the West. It might skew high. And if it skews high, it might be the right tail might be like 80% and the left tail might be like 65. But I don't really see it going much above 80 unless this is just hilariously skewed compared to the membership. Or perhaps the polling is wrong. That's also possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, again, I'm going to stick with my, 82 guess because I agree. Just the location of Calgary says that less Quebecois will show up. Granted, our membership in Quebec is already low to begin with. And, I'm really curious how many full slates we'll have from Quebec, if any. And the Maritimes, that's a long flight for you guys. Not a long flight, it's an expensive flight.
It's about $400 one way for me.
Yeah. Oh no, I believe it. For me, it was $325 round trip from Saskatchewan. So that's just airfare in Canada for you. But
yep.
Ultimately, I think the people more motivated to go are going to be the ones who support Pierre because they're the ones more active in the party. I think his issue is Quebec voters. Anyone who's any of those people who want Doug Ford as the leader, which I don't think is a huge cohort, and they're already going to be at the PC convention the same weekend. And any, the term I'm going to use is sloppy lists on Twitter who are Pierre isn't conservative enough. I don't think sloppy lists are engaged enough. I think Ford's people are going to be at his convention. And I think that a lot of Quebecers won't be there, which is why I think he's going to have a good showing. For reference, last time this happened was in 2005 when Stephen Harper was having his leadership review after he lost 2004, and he won 84%. So if we want to look at that as a gauge, do we think Pierre is more popular or less popular right now than Harper is, or was at that time?
I think he's more divisive.
More divisive among Canadians, but I think just with the rise of social media, actually, I don't know. I think with the rise of social media, his supporters are much more active.
The catch is Poilievre's best demographic is young people, and especially working, somewhere in the 25 to 45 range is his best demo. And that group can often have a suppressed turnout to things like this because take 1-2 days off work, it costs a bunch of money to fly there, they have jobs and stuff like that. Whereas the retirees are more anti-Poilievre and are probably more able to go. But then there's also the catch that a lot of retirees don't have the money to go because they don't have a income anymore. So there's always caveats on it. So it's hard to predict, perhaps.
I don't think he's in trouble
I
as
don't
long
think
as he's above 70.
I think he could go to 65 and be fine, to be honest.
Like you were saying, he got 70 in the leadership review, or in the leadership race. So if he walks away with more than that, he's already more popular than in 2022.
If he gets better than his leadership race, he's ironclad. If he gets better than 65, I think he's good. If you can say he has 2/3 of members backing him, that's pretty untouchable in my mind. Like,
especially for a party like the Conservatives, which is like always been viewed as the party divided among factions.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll have to see. Again, I think my estimate is a bit higher than your estimate, but I think we have similar ideas, so it makes sense. The next thing that I asked was about four crossers. And now, this one's kind of difficult because you're basically just going off of your anecdotal views of the merits of the Conservative MPs. But my respondents, it was 33% said that they think one more defector will happen. It was 27% that said nobody else is going to cross the four. 12% said that 3 to 5 more people were going to cross the four. And 27% also said that 2 more were going to cross the four. Personally, I don't know how I can accurately judge this because, again, it's just what are they offering individual Conservative MPs. But I feel like if someone else is going to cross, we're going to know before the convention. That's just my thoughts, because I don't think the Liberals want Pierre as the leader of the Conservative Party. So if they can destabilize our party, then that's kind of what their goal would be there. And if not before then, I will be fairly shocked if someone crosses after the convention. Yeah. What do you think?
I think the best way to describe it is it's not one of those categories. It's a combo. It's either 0 or 2 in my mind. And it would be, I think you're right. If it does happen, they're going to be either this week or next week to try to disconcert people, destabilize Poilievre before the convention. But I don't think it will be 1, and it's unlikely to be more than 2. The reason by that is 1 doesn't really do anything for Carney. Like, he has a majority, but it's 1 seat. That's razor thin. 1 MP being sick, 1 MP retiring early, and he can lose a conference. So it's not a very
God
stable...
forbid somebody dies.
Yeah, someone dies. Yeah. Someone couldn't also cross the floor later, and then you're back to where you start. It's a lot of political capital and resources for such a weak position. So I feel like 2 is... If it's not 2, it's mostly just ceremonial. It's not a real thing. But I don't think it's going to be more than 2, because I think we would have an inkling of it happening. You can't have too many conspiracies going on at the same time in a place like Ottawa where everyone's talking to everybody and it not just be known. So, 2 or 0 is what I'm thinking.
I think Carney has either realized or is going to realize that 172 seats is only a majority in name. Because first of all, you're going to have resignations, like Chrystia Freeland already resigned. Nate Erskine-Smith is probably going to resign once he's OLP leader, assuming that happens. And then, who knows, maybe some former Trudeau ministers are moving on to other things in their life. Somebody gets sick, exactly. Like, 172 seats doesn't do you much good in all reality. So, maybe he gets it so that he can have the majority in committees, because even if, to get the majority in committees, if my memory serves me correct, you need to have that majority happen, then prorogue Parliament and reset the committees with your majority Liberal MPs, and afterwards you would have to prorogue again if they somehow lost their majority. So the only benefit would be they get a majority on all committees if they cross that 172, which is a win for them. But is that worth the political backlash to come, the instability to come? Instability is a huge one. Stephen Guilbeault and one friend, let's say 2 cross, him and one friend could get mad over something. Maybe Carney approves a pipeline or something and just say we're voting the government down over this. Like, it's not a good position to be in. It's almost worse than having to rely on the NDP.
Yeah, and there's also a big risk too, and this is a big risk whenever you're taking on floor crossers. But if it's one, it's not as big of an issue. But if you're talking about, in this case, this would be like 3 or 4 floor crossers now. The actual MPs of the party get really discontented by this, especially a lot of local EDAs don't like that because, you're replacing their people with some other dude who was from the other party. And in a lot of cases, like people like Chris D'Entremont is actually quite conservative. He crossed because his sour grapes pretty much, but he's actually a very conservative person. So you bring people like this into the Liberal Party and it destabilizes the tent a little bit. Because you have people who are just completely opposed. Like, Chris D'Entremont is pro-life. He's in this party. Like, that's a really weird thing to do. And the more conservative MPs you try to grab, the more of that you're going to bring into the party. So it's very destabilizing.
I never thought about that, but like think about your EDA meetings where all of a sudden you're having an MP report from someone who only a few months ago you were telling everyone not to vote for, but now you're just supposed to welcome them as your MP. Like I could see that being for their local ridings. And you might be able to answer this better than me, but do people usually reward floor crossers? Like I know, for instance, Leona Alislev, she won re-election in 2021, or no, in 2019, and then lost 2021.
It depends a bit. So, like, being an incumbent is an advantage regardless of which party you're running in, because you have name recognition, you have a bunch of the other things, you have organization, you have time. Those are big advantages. But people don't care as much about MPs individually as people think they do. I'm not going to say there's no MPs in this world that are strong on their own merits and people like them on their own merits, but it's rare. Most MPs are replaceable. Like if you took the average Liberal MP or the average Conservative MP and replaced it with a different person, it wouldn't matter. Probably 95% of seats in the country, it would not matter who ran in that seat. The same party would still have gotten about the same performance. The only caveat is you're replacing an incumbent with non-incumbent. That's going to be a little bit of a hurt, but it's not going to be consequential. Like the by-election that Poilievre ran in, he did a little bit worse than Damien, but Damien was the incumbent, so you would expect him to do worse. And even then, it was only a little bit worse.
And there was also the whole effect of, like, I'm sure some locals didn't love the idea that some Ottawa MP was running over there just because he lost his seat.
Yeah.
So that could have suppressed some turnout. 81 was a really good result for Pierre there. And I think proves your point that, like, not that many MPs win on their own merit. Like, certainly they do, and the quality of your candidate turned MP can affect your local race. But in the end, like, in my safe Saskatchewan riding, would it really matter if we had a different candidate? No.
Yeah, like, where I live, like, in rural Nova Scotia, if you were to run any reasonable sounding middle-aged guy, like somewhere between 30 and 50, you're probably going to do about the same. Now, some people who work harder and do more work will get better results than a lazy MP might, or a lazy candidate might, but that's not an overwhelming thing. You might see a really diligent MP might do about 5% better than a really lazy one. But that's like the kind of gist. They're not a big difference between candidate quality, except for like the very exceptional circumstances. And you know the exceptions when you see them. Like the green guy in Kitchener Centre.
Oh yeah. Or another example is like Ned Keurig in Hamilton East Stony Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he worked his ass off to win that election. And would someone else have won it, in my opinion? Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so ultimately I think I agree with you that if they just poach one more, which they could do, that just wouldn't be a smart decision. So that might be suppressing some of their efforts, because how would that work if you get one guy to agree and say, oh, never mind, we're not accepting you because none of your friends want to join with you? Like, is that what they want to do?
I
Yeah,
doubt
you
it.
never know. Yeah.
Well, we'll
Okay.
see.
Yeah. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit. The next question was about provincial elections. So currently, Quebec is the only province scheduled to have an election in 2026. And the question I asked was, do you think anyone else is going to have an election? And if so, who? So, quite interestingly, 39% of respondents said that Alberta was going to have one. And the other provinces stated were BC, Ontario, question mark, Manitoba, and PEI. So I'll go through what I think first. Alberta, BC, possible. Manitoba, I could see it. PEI, possible. But there's no way Ontario is having a snap election, is there? Like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I echo that. I don't see any reason why Ford, with a majority government, would go to another election right now. It would also be like pointless. What would be the point of doing it to get one extra year in government? People don't like. There's no point. They wouldn't do that. BC, it could happen conceptually, but I don't think it will because EB apparently just doesn't want to do snap elections. Like he should have done a snap election in like spring 2024, but he didn't. He
Hmm.
just waited until the right consolidated. So I don't really know why someone who's willing to do that before is suddenly going to just go now when the right is more consolidated than it was before. Like, the polling is not such a huge advantage to him. There's really no reason to go. Conceptually, he could. There's just really no reason why.
I think most people are banking on something to happen to his one seat majority, which I think is much more likely than him calling a snap election. Unless something weird happens, like the BC Conservatives elect a really liberal leader who sends a lot of people to like one BC. But like, do I think that's going to happen? No.
No. I don't think it's possible the leadership electorate, because I think it's going to be the same leadership electorate that the Conservative Party has federally.
Yeah.
For the other provinces, Alberta and Manitoba, very possible. Both parties, the UCP and the Manitoba NDP, have all the reason to pull a snap election if they see blood in the water, because they're 3/4 of the way through their term this year, and their opposition doesn't look very strong, especially in Manitoba. The PCs in Manitoba look like they have their head cut off. Alberta,
Yes.
the NDP aren't doing great, but they're not doing terrible. It looks like we still have like a 10-point lead for the
I
Conservatives
think
there.
Manitoba's more likely just because their opposition's so weak. I don't think Nenshi is strong, but I think Smith could face some issues from, say, the Republicans or the progressive Tories. So if Premier Smith sees all of these other parties even rising in the polls a bit, I think she'd have every reason to call an election.
Now for PEI, I don't conceptually again it makes sense when you put that number there, that response there. There was the premier resigned and they have a new premier now, I believe. I haven't tracked
Well,
data closely.
he resigned. They had a new premier, and then they have another new premier because that premier resigned so that he can run for the job again. So the idea there, I'm pretty sure they're picking their new leader right away here in February. So I'm pretty sure the idea, okay, I can't English today. I'm pretty sure the idea there is that this new leader is going to get a honeymoon bump and call a snap election to get another term before the Liberals rise in the polls again.
Yeah, like conceptually that doesn't make sense, but we'll have to see because one of the issues when you're talking about any maritime province like this is the polling data is so sparse and so bad for a lot of these provinces. It's really hard to tell. Like maybe it looks like a good opportunity for the rest of us, but it could be that with their internal polls that the PEI PC party has, maybe they're doing awful in the polls. We don't really know because there's only one pollster that sometimes polls, and that pollster's not very good. It's narrative, so we don't really know. They could be doing terrible right now and not do a snap election, or they could be polling in like 50% range, and then they might do a snap election because the new leaders like doing snap elections because they like to say, "Hey, I'm the leader of my own merit. I didn't inherit someone else's term. I'm my own guy." But they're not going to do that if they're going to lose. So there's a lot of
If
uncertainty in that just because we don't know what's going on in BEI.
if I had to rank them, I'd say the most likely is Manitoba, followed by PEI in second, Alberta in third, and BC in fourth. Would be my personal ranking.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, so our next question that came up was a pretty self-explanatory one. Who will be elected as the new leader of the federal NDP? 43.8% said Heather McPherson, 37.5% said Avi Lewis, and just about 10% said Rob Ashton. And Tenniel Johnson and Tony McQuail, I'm going to assume every vote for them was a misclick. Unless someone is a real Tony McQuail truther out there, I don't think he's going to win. Ultimately, I'm really curious because we haven't seen much for polling data. All we've had is Avi saying that he is doing well with fundraising. Personally, I think he's the front runner just because he's the one getting crowds and apparently getting donations. But Heather's also an MP who's had years to build her profile, and the membership that exists from when Naheed Nenshi ran for Alberta NDP leader could still benefit her there, I think.
Personally, I don't have a good feel for this race. I don't think it's I don't think it's going to be Tony McQuail or Tenniel Johnson. And it seems like Rob might be in third place, but I don't feel like Heather McPherson's a very good candidate. And Avi Lewis seems reasonable for the NDP crowd. But part of me just wonders if he will work. I can't quite put it to words here, but I'm not certain. I also don't want to say too much on this because I do actually have this question, not this exact question, but the more detailed version of this question in my poll, and I don't want to spoil anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I can respect that. So as someone who cannot see your polling data, I'm thinking that Avi, I heard someone say too that he has Zoran Namdani's people working for him, which if he does, that's huge and could be beneficial. Because I think among young people, that type of stuff will work, just as Pierre's social media strategy worked in his leadership race. But I think Heather having a high profile like she does could help her in the end. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I think it's definitely an Avi versus Heather race. It's whether it's close enough that Rob Ashton supporters decide the winner or whether one of them has the edge. I don't think Rob Ashton's going to win. At the start, it seemed like he had a lot of momentum, but I just think, again, he's a union guy. He's never ran for office. He's never really talked about politics or had a profile before this. He kind of just like waltzed in and said, I'm change, which can work. It can work. But will it for the NDP? Personally, I don't think so.
I don't think the NDP leadership electorate is composed of the people who would like someone like Rob Ashton anymore. There's definitely going to be some of them, don't get me wrong, and Rob, with his union connections, might have the ability to get a lot of people signed up. But, and this is a big but, the NDP, as I've touched on many times on my channel, under Singh, intentionally sacrificed their blue-collar working-class people to chase after the urbanite progressives. So there's not a lot of the blue-collar guys left, as I touched on many, many times, just anecdotally. My father-in-law, he's a union guy, union leader, in fact, of a local union, voted conservative in the last election. He's never voted conservative before in his life. Like, he stopped voting NDP in 2015. That was the last NDP vote he made. So a lot of these blue-collar union guys that someone like Rob is going for are gone. They're not in the party anymore. And they're probably not coming back. So I don't really see his path. So it really just boils down to, does Heather actually have enough name recognition and care in the base? And if she doesn't, then it's going to be Avi. Just a matter of how many ballots it takes.
Yeah, and that was the next question, is how many ballots it will take. So the most popular response, almost half of people said that it was going to be a 2-ballot victory. 15% said 1-ballot victory. another 15% said 3-ballot victory, and someone said, or not someone, it was the next runner-up for responses was a 4-ballot victory. So 4 ballots, I think the logic there would be is that it's really close and there's still 5 candidates. Because if I remember correctly, there still might not be all 5 candidates come voting time. Because I think they still have the potential, especially Tennille and Tony, to fall off the ballot with fundraising by not meeting their requirements. That could happen. But even if not, I don't think they're going to have a high enough share of the vote to make it drag out that long. So I think there's a strong potential for a 1-ballot victory that no one sees coming, especially with a small party like that. That's always possible if someone's just signing up a lot of members. If I had to guess, I'd agree with the people saying 2 ballots because, again, Rob does decent with his union connections. Avi and Heather both take up a decent share, and it's just whoever Rob's votes go to. Which, I mean, I'm wrong, though, because that wouldn't mean 2 ballots, because the other 2 would have to fall off first. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's going to be the number of ballots that there are candidates minus 1. So if Tennille and Tony fall off because they can't meet the fundraising targets, it'll be 2 ballots. If they're still there, it's going to be 4 ballots. I don't think it's possible for it to be a 1 ballot. I don't see anyone with... We're very thin on actual real data for this race as public, but I don't really see anyone having enough of an advantage to win in the first round. You would need someone, or the second round, you need someone in the first round to have 45% or so of the vote, maybe higher, because Tennille and Tony are probably going to get like less than 5% each. So the first person in first place would need to have a very high, like high 40s, like 45 to probably closer to 48%. So it seems unlikely it's going to be 1. 2 is probably a good bet, especially if only 3 people are on the ballot, but I still think it will take N-1 ballots, where N is the number of candidates.
I think, let's just say everyone stays on the ballot. I think after a brief reevaluation, it's either a 1-ballot victory or an N-1 ballot victory. Because, again, for all we know, someone's just going to win without much competition, or they're not going to, and the ballot trickle happens there. And if it's going to be a 1-ballot victory, I feel like that would be Abby. That's just, honestly, though, that's just anecdotally. That's not data.
I agree there. I don't think Heather can do a 1-ballot victory.
Unless, again, there's a lot of leftovers. Because if I remember correctly, even though Nenshi divorced the membership of NDP provincially versus federally, I think it was an opt-out thing. So, assuming those people's memberships haven't expired, which have they? I don't know the number, so maybe they've all expired and this point's useless. But what if all those leftovers take Premier Notley's lead and go and vote for Heather because she told them to? But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Avi, he's headed to Edmonton in the coming days.
Even if Heather got 100% of the vote in Alberta, I believe they still use a point system similar to the Conservative Party, so that wouldn't be enough. I think
so, yes.
It wouldn't be enough to win in and of itself.
I should have researched this beforehand. I'm pretty sure they use a point system. If it's 1 member, 1 vote, then it could get interesting if there's just a lot of Alberta members. But you have to remember, there's an NDP government in British Columbia, and I think most BC people are going to vote for Avi just because he's from BC. He's the anti-pipeline guy, and that's what the NDPers there seem to be interested in. Yeah. Anything else to say to that, you think, NDP leadership?
I don't think so at the moment.
Yeah, well, if something comes up, just shout. But the next thing that came up, this will be a quick point. Will a trade deal be reached between Canada and America in 2026? 57.6% said yes. Sorry, 57.6% said no, and 42.4% said yes. Again, it comes down to, do you think Carney's a good negotiator who's going to get a deal? Do you think he wants a deal?
What I think is going to happen on this front is Carney is, my gut feeling is going to call a snap election prior to the USMCA renegotiation, get a majority, go to the USMCA renegotiation. This is the plan, at least from Carney's perspective, and go to the USMCA renegotiation, fold to Trump on basically everything, but in return maybe get some extractions. So we're probably going to see like supply management get gutted. We might see U.S. banks allowed to operate in Canada more freely, stuff like that. U.S. telecoms, stuff like that. And then he'll get some other concessions elsewhere that he can say, look, we got a good deal. But you'll probably, with that, he'll probably like fold supply management in a really, really sneaky way. Because there's like the obvious way, which is the number of import quota you can change. But the U.S. doesn't actually use all their import quota because for various reasons, it's actually kind of hard to sell milk to processors in Canada. One of the reasons they don't want to buy U.S. milk. They just refuse to do it. But there's a lot of things that Carney could do federally to fix that and to make it so that the U.S. could use 100% of their quota, which would be a really big concession to the U.S. on supply management, but would be kind of sneaky and people wouldn't really notice it. So I think you might see a bunch of stuff like that. And I think there would be a deal in that case. If Carney loses the snap election and then Poilievre's the leader, whole other question. I don't know. I don't think Poilievre will get a deal. And I think you won't get it on purpose.
Do you think his plan of getting majority is feasible? Because that's kind of leading into the next question.
It's possible, but it's high risk, high reward maneuver for Carney. Because if Carney loses it, he's gone.
Mm-hmm. Like, I think, again, I'm kind of spoiling the next thing, but I think the Conservatives are in a better spot now than they were in April. So I think going to a snap election would be unwise. And I think the public would kind of have a reaction of just why. Altogether, if I think a deal will be reached, I think no. But that's probably just given the news cycle of the last week, with Carney saying that we're in some new world order, that we're abandoning the U.S., that the world doesn't have us in that position. But again, for all we know, he's already having a deal negotiated in the background. I left this question kind of vague on purpose. Like, is a good USMCA negotiation a trade deal? What is a trade deal? What does that look like?
I think a lot of Carney's rhetoric, especially at Davos today, and with relation to China, is just posturing versus Trump. And I think Trump likes that kind of posturing. I think he respects that kind of posturing. But I think it's posturing. I don't think Carney actually wants to change the world. I don't think he likes the idea to change the world. I think he wants the world to go back to where it was in the 90s. He might say otherwise, but that's not. But what he wants at the end is to reestablish the 1991 consensus.
I think I would disagree. I think Carney's a suck for power who would love to have some Carney doctrine. And I think you have to remember he had some like official job with the World Economic Forum. So I think he, like today in Davos, he enjoyed being there and saying, basically going, look how great I am, look how great we're doing in Canada. But yeah, I think a trade deal is possible. I think no, just because that type of stuff, if he's already starting right now, unless it's going on in the background, I don't think we're going to get one. But I could see your plan taking shape if that were to occur. And if he has a majority in the 4-year mandate and the Conservatives are in shambles, then of course, go get a deal. You can have the political win that gets you that looks good in the short term, but in the long term causes a lot of issues. So the next question, unless you had something else to say, the next question was about what we think the polls were going to look like. So I gave everyone, I had them write down the percentage that they think the polling will be at the end of 2026 and the seat count based on Poilievre's modeling. However, if an election happens in 2026, I will use that as a prediction for the upcoming election. There's a lot of guesses. Some people had like a Liberal majority of 200 seats. I think the best Conservative showing was 205 seats. Some people had us back at 2021. Some people had Carney at 48. Overall, it actually produced a pretty reasonable average. The polling average was 40.3% for the Conservatives, 38.5 seats for the Liberals, 9.9% for the NDP. The Bloc was at 8% 1.7% for the Greens, the PPC at 1%, and others at 1%. And the seat count, this is again based on what people guessed. I didn't punch this into a simulator, but when I did, it was similar. Was Conservatives at 156 seats, the Liberals at 140 seats, the Bloc at 31 seats, the NDP at 15, and the Greens at 2. Altogether, I actually think this is about exactly where I think things will be, just because if the NDP picks a decent leader who gives them a slight bump, and if Carney continues to alienate some progressives, that's kind of what I'm expecting. And I think the Bloc being at 8% is possible. They're already seeing a bit of a bump, and if they have separatist partners on the rise. And seat count, again, no one's in majority territory. I think we're in safe minority territory, as someone put it to me. I don't think it'd be a blowout for either side.
Yeah. My 2 cents on this. It's possible in the future, following the October election in Quebec, that the Bloc will gain ground like that. But right now, I don't think they're anywhere close to 8 in Quebec, or 8% nationally, sorry. And I don't think the NDP is going to do that much better. I think they're already polling close to their high. Because I think their current polling is already pricing. Now? They're polling around that, yes. But the NDP always chronically underperforms their polls. They never, ever get the same result as their polling, pretty much ever, in federal politics. And provincially, they usually underperform their polling quite bad, too.
Look at Saskatchewan.
Yeah. Or Alberta. And so I don't think the NDP is going to be getting anywhere close to 10. I suspect they'll probably be capped out at 8. And the Bloc right now is probably 6, but it could go to 8 next year if Plamondon does win and he does do well. And if that's the case, then those numbers are going to come from the Liberals. If the Bloc's up and the NDP are up, that's coming from the Liberals. It's not coming from the Conservatives. So, in a sense, these numbers look reasonable because the Liberals are the ones losing ground for the NDP Bloc going up, which makes sense. But I don't think the NDP is going up, and I think the Bloc is not currently anywhere close to 8.
You see, my theory with the NDP is they aren't going back to their 18% anytime soon. However, it's worth remembering that in 2021, they had 18%. So, adjusting for turnout, like, I'm going to put this very simply, 18% of Canadians would consider voting for them. However, how many of them actually will vote for them? I think 10% is reasonable. I don't think it's easy. I think hitting 10% would be difficult. I think the NDP's interest, honestly, is in running a more surgical campaign, not a national campaign. They want to identify the 20 seats they can do the best in and hope to win 12 to 15 of them.
Yeah.
So I think their number won't be as high, but I think they could easily reattain party status by just following that surgical method of campaigning.
I think there is a very good shot if the NDP does everything correctly, even at 8%, they can get their 12 seats for party status, especially if the Liberals lose some ground. But, this is a big but, there's just really not a market for the NDP's policies, especially when we look at the top 2 candidates. Heather is just kind of an empty suit, but the NDP version, an empty pantsuit, I guess. And Avi Lewis is kind of like the lefty, populisty, like Mamonti type-ish. That's kind of how he's positioned himself. Whether he's actually going to do that, hard to say, but that's kind of how he's positioning himself. And I don't think there's really a market for that in Canada. Canada's really boiling into like reforming young people versus like status quo old people. And the reforming young people are going to the Conservative Party. They're not going to left-wing populism.
Yes.
So I don't really see there being a market for that to really grow up. And I don't see the old people who are voting Liberal wanting to defect NDP, and I don't see the young people voting Conservative wanting to defect NDP. So there's not much of a marketplace for them anymore.
So that leads to the seats then. If they run this surgical campaign that doesn't really help the Conservatives. Granted, you look at how marginal some seats are, and even if the NDP went up, like, let's say they went up 2% in every riding, that would have flipped, like, a decent amount of seats last election.
Yeah, and it's going to be more
But does that
concentrated than
deliver?
that. They're going to have a bunch of ridings where they gain or lose ground. Sorry, gain nearly zero or lose ground. They're going to have some ridings where they gain probably like 10 points.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So I think seat count-wise, I think the Conservatives, too, this is one of the selling features about Outhouse, is he runs surgical campaigns. The campaign manager isn't everything, but with Outhouse in there, he's going to be saying, we go surgical. We try and hold whatever we can, and I think that includes abandoning some incumbents who are kind of doomed if the NDP runs this campaign of surgery, but we focus on Brampton and Surrey. Now, does that result in the best policy ideas? I'll leave that up to my viewers to debate. I think that's going to be the play, though, is they go look at all the seats that they were closest in and just run the campaign to favor those seats. And that in itself could deliver them this minority of 156 seats. But I think the polling would have to show them, for the Conservatives to be confident in a minority, I think they'd want the polling to be saying that they're winning, that they're winning the same amount of votes as the last election, because I feel like they tend to overperform the polls, even by a little bit. A little bit goes a long way for them, it feels like. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think this polling average is reasonable. I think the Block's a bit high, as you said, but I think the NDP number's slightly believable. And another thing is I think the PPC is only going to continue to fall, and I think the Greens are only going to continue to fall. The Greens doing as good as they did in 2019 was a complete fluke. The Greens are only going to continue to shrivel up and die, apart from maybe retaking Kitchener Centre with Mike Morris.
Yeah. I would say, I don't want to get too much into it because it's a little out of scope for this, but
Yeah.
So in the first pass, the post system, the way things work is you have challenger parties who try to replace the main party, and if they fumble that, they die. And the Greens were challenging the NDP, and they fumbled in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're fried. I don't think they're really long for this world. They're even starting to tank in PEI in New Brunswick, where they do well provincially. They did quite bad in the last two provincial elections, relatively speaking. And I don't think they're going to recover.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Greens, again, I didn't have a question about the Greens, whether they're going to shrivel up and die. But I think effectively, Elizabeth May is just a glorified incumbent because she is a party of one right now. And if Mike Morris comes back, Mike Morris and Elizabeth May actually voted against each other on a few notable things, notably the Emergencies Act. So, again, they both function as more community-based independents than an actual party, I feel like. That hurts them. And Jenica Atwin switching over the enemy Paul Chaos also, I feel like, delegitimized them in New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Altogether, I think that benefits the NDP, the Greens shriveling up and dying, and the PPC, if they continue to shrivel up and die, maybe we finally win Kitchener-Conestoga, but I think that'll happen anyway, but that's just wishful thinking.
Yeah. Perhaps.
Okay. The next question was very similar to this one, and it was the Quebec polling average. So I did the same thing. I had less responses here, which makes sense because I don't know how much my Saskatchewan audience knows about my Quebec audience and their polling. But I got a lot of Quebecois responses, which is good. So my polling average was PQ 40%, PLQ 22.5%, CAQ 15%, PCQ 14.2%, and Quebec Solidaire at 7.6%. And the PQ was at 78 seats, PLQ 31 seats, PCQ 8 seats, and Quebec Solidaire and CAQ at 4 seats. Note, this happened before Francois Legault announced his resignation. Media observation says that it's a very optimistic guess for the CAQ that they win 4 seats. Possible, but optimistic, in my opinion. PLQ depends how popular Miard is. Maybe he gets 31 seats. Could happen. PCQ, that's also a very hit and miss thing. Does the collapse of the CAQ really benefit the PCQ? I think so, but I think the PCQ ceiling is whatever share of the vote Pierre got in Quebec in the provincial election. Because I think that's the option a lot of Pierre voters are going to go. And even then, there's a lot of provincial liberal, federal conservative voters in Quebec.
So these numbers, the seat numbers, that's the guesses from the participants, the average.
Yes, that's the average of the guesses. Sorry, I should have specified that.
So the polling average guesses, or the guesses of the polling numbers, those seem pretty reasonable, plus or minus some points, but I think within margin of error they seem reasonable. The seat numbers are kind of wild. Like, no offense, viewers, but you are really overestimating how easy it is for small parties to retain seats when the main party has 40% of the vote and everyone else is like 20 or less.
I'd agree.
This kind of numbers, you'd probably expect the Parti Québécois to have like 90 something seats, not 78. Like, they would have a stumping majority. They might even have over 100, depending on how the regional math breaks out.
Well, look how Legault did in the last election.
Yeah.
Like, he got that amount of the vote, and he got over 100. No, he got 90 seats, sorry, not 100. But he could have.
Yeah. It's very unlikely the CAQ and Quebec Solidaire will have 4 seats with numbers like this. Quebec Solidaire is losing almost half their vote. CAQ's losing over half their vote. Very unlikely. PCQ gaining 8 seems unlikely. They might be able to pull like 2 or 3, but 8, probably not.
Really? You think only 2 or 3?
No, with these numbers as presented here? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. With those, okay, that makes sense with these numbers as presented. But I think the viewers are a little bit wrong. Personally, I think Legault resigning in January throws a wrench into all of this, because for all we know, Legault's people, we don't know where the CAQ voters are going. Are they going to stay CAQ and they pick a decent leader? Are they going to go PCQ? Because it seems like Legault favors the Conservative Party, but he was never really clear about it, and a lot of Conservatives would disavow that endorsement. And maybe they go and support Charles Millard.
Yeah,
I personally think if I had to make a guess right now, PQ minority.
I think,
which is kind of bold right now.
I think that is very bold. So, like, there is a big, with the new PLQ leadership race and the CAQ leadership race coming up, there's a big unknown. There's a big known unknown. 2 of them. But unless CAQ picks up a unicorn, or the Liberals pick up a unicorn, you're going to probably see a stumping majority for the Parti Québécois. Because I think the polling, like the numbers your viewers guessed, match the polling pretty well. But I think the polling is underestimating the Parti Québécois by a lot. Because you look at the by-elections, and they're tracking like they should be in the mid-40s, like 44, 45% based on the by-election performances. They're not tracking like they're in the high 30s. And yes, by-elections are not 1-to-1 to actual elections, but they're not 0-to-1. They're like 70, 80% to 1. There's actually a pretty strong correlation between them if you understand them correctly. Now, in this particular case, if there's good new leaders for the PLQ or the CAQ, that could make the by-election data worthless. But if they replace Legault with Legault 2.0, and they replace what's his face?
Rodriguez
with Rodriguez 2.0, then it's going to be valid, and their Plamondon's probably going to be cruising to a very strong percentage. And even if you see a really strong Liberal leader or a really strong CAQ leader, if they're both really strong, it's actually the worst case scenario because they kind of cannibalize each other's votes a bit. But if one of the others really strong, you're still probably going to see the Parti Québécois getting around like 35 to 40% range, because that's about how many people in Quebec support independence. And that's one of his main stumping points, Plamondon. And I don't really think he's going to underperform that number by a substantial number, by a meaningful percentage.
Like, I don't think separatists are going to go vote PLQ, obviously. And I don't think they're going to go vote PCQ either, because the PLQ and PCQ market themselves as we are federalists.
Well, PCQ is a bit more of an autonomous party, but yeah, close enough.
Yeah, that is true. They are more autonomist, but I think that autonomy is more just a conservative, like, libertarian thing than a, like, we don't like Canada thing. I think it's a lot like say Scott Moe. I don't think Scott Moe is a separatist, but I think it's good political posturing. Obviously, the prairies is completely different, but I think the analogy remains that just if it's good posturing to say we want control over ourselves. That's kind of how Pierre ran in 2022. Yeah. No, I think Quebec, had I known when I was designing this, I mean, I knew that Rodriguez resigned, but I didn't know that Legault was going to go. I might not even have included this question because for all we know, the CAQ does pick up this unicorn and we have a CAQ competitive party again and everything's thrown on its head.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. There's no Carney waiting in the wings. I think Carney was just a one-off ridiculous thing that happened in Canada one time.
The unicorn question is the big one here, but we will see.
Yeah.
Though
I don't think it's good for a party to bank on finding a unicorn. I'll say that. Well, we're going to move on to our resignation drafts now. So how this worked was I had a question on my Google form that said resignation draft, and everyone could put, I think I said 5 party leaders that they think will be out of their jobs before the end of the year. Now, some of you guys thought you were really smart in just making a list of interim leaders. That's not going to cut it. I'm not covering those. But a lot of you guys, most of you did put some actual permanent leaders who could be gone. So I'm going to go over those. So for the first 2 names are not going to be shocking. They were Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney. So I think for that to happen, obviously they would have to lose an election unless Pierre faced caucus issues, or in theory, if something happened within Carney's caucus, but I don't think that would happen.
Yeah, I don't think the Liberal caucus is going to throw out Carney. Based on what we saw with Trudeau, he would need to be sustained polling in the low 20s, and, well, he's not, so.
Yeah, that's not... I'd be shocked if one of them was gone without losing an election before the end of the year. The next, a lot of these make a lot of sense, so they won't take that long to cover. Like, for instance, Mike Pemberton in the Yukon. I'll be shocked if he's still the leader, just because he lost an election by a lot, didn't win a seat. I don't know how he's not gone yet.
Sometimes after losing an election, people stick around for a little bit just so that the board who runs the party has time to organize a new election, so that's probably what that is. I can't imagine he's going to try to run again after that defeat.
Yeah, well, they won 1 seat. I'm pretty sure it was just 1 seat in the Yukon for the Liberals. Yeah. So the next one, I'm kind of regretting taking so long to make this video because of this. But Legault was on the draft. He's obviously already announced that he's going to be resigning. Did I see this happening? I'll be honest, I was one of the people who thought he was just going to resign after an election loss. I did not think he was going to resign. So, I guess that's how we can address this. Did you think he was going to resign?
Yeah. Because so I'm going to phrase this. There was like a 50-50 chance in my mind that he was going to resign. Because there's pretty much no hope right now with the CAQ for them to win. The only, or even like have a tolerable loss, the only way to do even tolerable would be to do some Hail Mary throws. But there doesn't seem to be any Hail Marys to throw, because if I was the CAQ, I would be throwing them. And they're not.
Exactly.
So it was pretty reasonable, likely that he was going to resign. You just know, like, if you're doomed to lose and you already have your M&A pension, why stay on for 9 months just to lose?
That's true.
What's the point?
Well, I think, too, to go back to what we were just talking about with Quebec politics, I think Legault, it's interesting to see that in the wake of this happening, the 4 seats that the CAQ would be most likely to win, I think it's 3 out of the 4 are not running in the next election, already announced, one of them being Francois Legault, which to me makes sense when someone put it like this. Who wants to be the 4 leftovers in the next assembly?
It's a tough sell. You
Like,
can
would you want it?
you can rebuild from zero, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time.
And the CAQ rebuild from zero? They are the Legault party. This is their first leadership race ever.
If they don't get a unicorn, I don't think they're gonna be long for this world. They might
Like,
not
I will.
contest 2028 at this rate, or 2030, I
That's
should say.
what. That's what I'm thinking. Is if they win 0 seats this time, they're gone. If they win 3 seats and one of those MNAs becomes a leader who has some appeal, maybe they are like the Quebec Solidaire and kind of exist in the background forever, unless Quebec Solidaire gets wiped out too this time. But you never know. So another name that came up too was John Hogan. I have to make that clear. John Hogan, who was the premier of Newfoundland and Labrador until he lost what is still kind of a surprise, but not really, but kind of, to Tony Wakeham, Newfoundland. He's on this list, which makes sense. Again, former premier, stick around for a little bit, and then decide to wander off. Wasn't premier for that long, so for all we know, maybe he is playing the long game and saying, well, maybe I can be back at my old job in 4 years.
I think he might stay. There's a chance he stays because, like, he wasn't in office for very long, and his defeat wasn't that big. Like, yes, they did lose, but it wasn't a decisive defeat. The Tories in Newfoundland only have an exact 21 seat majority. 21 seats is needed for majority. So it could be a pretty fragile government, and they only lost by about 1% of the popular vote. So there is a reasonable chance he stays on even after losing, though he could also just resign. It depends. I think that comes down to personal preference, really.
Yeah, well, just like John Turner. Like, John Turner's the best example. Like, he lost in a landslide, actually, and he still stuck around to contest another election. But, again, there's, like, I think it just comes down, his preference was to stay, because I think in his head he thought, like, something's going to go south with NAFTA or Mulroney's agenda, and I can weather the storm. And he did put up a decent fight in 88. Didn't win, but was a lot better than the crushing defeat of 84. So you never know, some leaders have that mentality. Here's a fun one. Obi Khan. Is Obi Khan gone at the end of 2026?
I think it's... If there's a snap election, I think he's toast. Otherwise, he's going to stay on. Because right now, with the polling in Manitoba, if a snap election occurs, the PCs will get blown out of the water. They did pretty bad in a rural... Or I think it was fairly rural. I don't remember the exact writing.
I think it was like suburban, but I know it, like that by-election you're talking about.
They did really bad in that by-election, all things considered. So, and the polling is pretty bad. So if they do go into election, I think he's toast and he'll probably resign. But if they don't go into an election this year, he's going to probably stay on because I don't think that I think he had, I have to double check this, but off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure most of the caucus endorsed him.
That is true. And here's the thing, is our caucus is usually brave enough to coup a leader before they're even done a year, even if the direction looks atrocious.
Well,
I don't think so.
Let's put it this way. Like, how many times have you seen the caucus coup a leader in Canada? The only time
O'Toole. That's it.
Recently was O'Toole. And even before that, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't looked at every single province, mind you, but in my lifetime, I'm not aware of any other instance.
Well, Trudeau's caucus, if they had the Reform Act, you can argue might have. But I still think, had it come down to a vote, he still would have had the narrow backing to stay, Trudeau. But that's still, like, the caucus didn't coup him. He lost support in the caucus. But ultimately, if he would have decided, I'm going to stay on regardless, the caucus would have just said, shucks, basically.
Yeah, Trudeau's kind of a funny edge case. Like, was he pushed out, or did he resign of his own merit? I really would say more resign of his own merit than pushed out.
I think it's like that perfect mix of both.
Yeah. But there's only
the next one...
Sorry.
Sorry, Keep talking.
There's only really one clean case that I can think of where it's like very clearly the caucus removed the leader. And even then, that was after a failed election. And in the case of Trudeau, it was after 3 years of crashing poll numbers with an election coming.
And 3 atrocious by-elections.
Yeah. And the deputy PM, like, resigning.
Oh, yeah. Is that everything you had to say? Sorry, I jumped ahead of you a little bit.
No, I'm good.
So, the next one, this is a fun... I kind of laughed when I saw this one. Elizabeth May. She said she's resigning, but will she actually do it?
Did she... I don't recall her exact statement again. Was it that she was resigning this year?
She said, I'm not leading the party into the next election, and didn't elaborate.
Yeah, okay.
If you have an option...
She's gonna stay on.
Does she have an option if the election's in April? Like...
She's gonna stay on as an MP. I don't think she's gonna resign her seat.
It's a leader draft. Like, do you think she'd resign as lead? Does she resign as leader?
Oh, I misunderstood. As leader?
No, I think she'll hold her seat until she's either defeated or dies.
So that leads to an interesting question. Was Elizabeth May not the leader during 2021 election? On paper, she wasn't, but she was basically a shadow leader.
She's the only thing that kept that party together.
No, actually the opposite, I would say. Like, her and Paul's fighting over actual control of the party is why that campaign did so bad in 2021. And her and whatever her co-leader, when I tried that out, they butted heads a lot too, and one of the reasons why he left out, because she likes the idea of not being in charge, but she hates the idea of not being in charge.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it. But the thing is, once Elizabeth May's gone, what is the Green Party?
It's dead.
It is already dead, though. Like, what's the difference between Mike Morris being... Is Mike Morris a Green MP, or is he just a community-minded, environmentalist-focused NDP MP?
Yeah.
So when it comes to the resignation, I'm going to say no, just because I don't see... If the election's this year, she's going to say, oh, whoopsies, there's no time for a leadership race. Even if you don't just say... I think it's kind of weird that you just say, I'm not running the party into the next election without, like, giving a date or anything. Because you don't do that. If you're a party of one, you can do that. Also, what's the point of not being the leader of the party if it's only MP? You are a parliamentary system. But, yeah. I don't know. I don't want to dedicate too much time to Elizabeth May in this video. She should really, in all honesty, get 343rd of the time. Okay, so the next one is really interesting, and I'm curious what you'll have to say. Merritt Stiles.
Well,
there you go.
Merritt Stiles is not going anywhere because the NDP will never kick out a leader. It won't happen. We'll never do it. She'll stay there until she resigns of her own accord, and she hasn't announced a resignation yet after the abysmal performance last year. So I don't think she's going to go anywhere. She's going to keep cruising. She's going to run into another election. They're going to do bad. She's going to probably stay on again, keep cruising, and then probably resign after the third election loss, like every NDP
Would you call her result abysmal, though?
Yeah, it was awful.
68%. 68%. Okay, it's not great by any metric, but it's still, like, I'd still call that a clear-ish majority.
Oh, are you talking about the leadership race or the review?
I'm
talking about the election result.
Oh, the election. Hey, sorry. Two different things. I'm talking about her review. They had an abysmal election result. That is 100. That's a fact.
Oh yeah, no, her review 68% was fine. That's more than enough. That's more than enough to keep yourself on. I'm on her election, like the last year's Ontario provincial election was abysmal. Lost a quarter of their vote, or a little less than a quarter. Like 20% of their vote share. Lost a seat, but only the fact that they only lost one was kind of miraculous. But losing 5 percentage points of vote share, just horrifyingly bad.
They were behind the OLP and PV, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, like 10 points.
Like, It was that bad?
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
They're
Like,
only
no.
in first place because their incumbents are quite strong, and the OLP's vote is hilariously inefficient.
So that's what I was going to get to, is if Merritt did resign. Like, she won that leader. She didn't have a leadership race. She won uncontested.
Yeah.
So my take is, if she left one way or another, it'd have to be like a defeated NDP MP. And even then, I feel like you're going to have, like, say, Matthew Green or some of those people just trying to take their seats back next time if the environment's a bit better for the NDP. Those are the only people I could really see even bothering mounting campaigns. Because which Ontario NDP MLA is actually interested in being the leader of the opposition?
Good question. Apparently, only Styles was because no one ran against her.
Yeah. I know. Okay. The next two are from the same province. Which two names do you think I'm thinking of?
Me? I can see the document.
Oh, shucks. Okay. Well, they're Scott Moe and Carla Beck. Both were drafted. Now, Scott Moe will come up a bit more under the next thing, but we can talk about him in, like, a party leader sense. Which one of the two do you think is more likely to go, Moe or Beck?
Mo.
You think Moe?
I
Because
because
I agree.
I don't
I
think
agree.
I don't think Mo's going to get forced out or anything, but I think he's going to do a long-standing tradition of parties that have won several consecutive elections, and I think he is going to uh, retire, like leave the job early while the polling numbers are good, with a 2 or so years left in the term, so it'll be sometime this year, and
So
give the part
exactly what Paul did.
yeah give the
Yeah.
give the party time to find a good, solid replacement leader. Give them a year or two to govern, and then go into the next election. Because, like, leaders have a shelf life. It doesn't matter if Mo was the best thing since sliced bread when he became the leader. It's been almost 10 years now. Sometimes you just need to
Here's
rotate.
here's the only thing about Saskatchewan. It is ridiculously hard to win the election if you're not the Sask party, because not ridings that aren't in Regina and Saskatoon already make the majority. So it's 30 to 31 ratio. So for the NDP to win, even if they win, wait, no, I think it's 29. Doesn't matter. They already have the majority. How I think it works is the NDP has to find two seats not in non-Regina or Saskatoon to win. And to me, that means they have to win either Moose Jaw, PA, both of two ridings, Prince Albert. They have to win one of those cities or a combination. And the Sask party knows this, so that's why they funnel resources all that way. It's like they'd have to really be unpopular. And if the teacher strikes didn't kill them, because a lot of people, I speak as a Saskatchewan student, people were not happy with the government about the teacher strikes. But they're like, they're just like, we're not progressives. And the thing about Carla Beck is she is the leader who brought the party the closest they've been to governing since the Sask party reign began. So I'd be shocked, really, if they decided to get rid of her.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any chance Beck goes. Because first off, as I said before with Styles, the NDP is not the party that just throws away leaders after one try. That almost never happens for the NDP. And she actually objectively did quite well in the 2024 election. Like, anyone who's upset with her performance is just completely unreasonable with expectations for the NDP in Saskatchewan in the current year. You're not going to find... it's very unlikely you'll find someone who's going to outperform her in the near future.
The only person is someone who I would argue is the most likely to take over should Beck quit, and it's Trent Wotherspoon. And I just think he has her charisma without giving off the same, like, leftist student energy. Maybe that's just me that gets that energy from her, but it's still how I look at her, kind of. Or maybe I'm just partisan, but I get kind of that vibe from her, and it's kind of hard to get rid of that, especially when you're the leader of the Saskatchewan NDP. So he's the only guy I could see replacing her and doing better than her, unless there becomes a Wotherspoonite faction and a Beckite faction. altogether, I think Beck's safe. And Mo seems like he wants to stay on. He's talking like he's staying on. He talked like that during the convention. But again, Francois Legault he was saying there's nothing wrong a month ago. And
Well, that's the thing, right? Like,
resigning.
if you're a leader, you have to always say you're staying on, you're going to contest the next election until you decide, like, you finally come to the conclusion you're not. Because as soon as you put any doubt, you're toast. You're dead.
Well, you just enable the criticism.
Yeah.
Here's the next one that, unless you have something else to say there, the next one, again, kind of is stealing the next category. Danielle Smith. I think she's fine. It's me. I think she's something really haywire would have to happen with like separatists and caucus, or she'd have to lose an election for her
The
to go.
only way I see this happening is if I'm recalling correctly, I think there's like 6, maybe 7 recall petitions out. If all of those meet the signature count, and then the recalls happen this year, and the UCP loses every single recall, then she might be forced to quit. But that seems, first off, just getting all of them to pass the signature requirement seems unlikely. But it's even less likely that they will lose every single one. Like, if they lose one of them, she's probably fine. 2 is dubious, but that seems very unlikely to me. Like, the polling
I think
is not
more
good
likely
enough
she
for
just
the...
calls a snap election
Yeah,
if that happens.
that'd be kind of funny. They get, like, all 7 of these signature requirement, and then she just calls a snap election.
I think it would be funny, but I think that's what she would do and what the smartest decision for her would be. Instead of risk somehow Nenshi takes over, which he wouldn't. I highly doubt they would win 7 seats back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
Smith will cover her more in the next one, but this one's pretty self-explanatory. I don't even have their names written down, but it's the 2 Quebec Solidaire spokespeople.
Well, it's
Will you
good,
want to stay around if your party collapses? I don't think so.
it's good money that even if there wasn't an election, they say that one of them would be gone by the end of the year, because that's just the annual tradition.
Well, I think they've already gone through a few of them this session of this assembly.
The problem with dual leaders is that doesn't exist. You can't have 2 leaders. That's not a thing that happens. So,
Leader implies I'm in charge.
like, one of them is going to be the one who's actually in charge, and the other one is just going to be, like, their VP. And then that one's going to be jaded and upset because no one cares about them and what they want to say, and then they're going to quit. And that just keeps happening over and over again, because you can't have 2 leaders. Like, even if you go way back and reach this, you look at, like, Republican Rome during, like, the classical era, they did have 2 consuls, but they alternated who was actually in charge at any given point in time. Like, they weren't both in charge. One was in charge, then the other one was in charge. But the Quebec Solidaire doesn't even do that. They're both simultaneously in charge, which is not a thing. It doesn't work. That doesn't happen. And it didn't really work very well in Republican Rome either.
It didn't work well for the Greens either.
No.
Exactly. I think that's just bound to happen, especially if their party just collapses. Just be told, if both of them quit at once, what are the odds that Quebec Solidaire is just like, what if we become a normal party and have one leader? But I don't know their requirements for party constitution amendments. I'm not that much of a nerd.
I think it's extremely unlikely that will ever happen. I think it's more likely Quebec Solidaire just... Yeah. I think it's more likely Quebec Solidaire just dies.
I don't think they'll ever completely die. But I think they're going to be on life support after this.
They might very well get 0 seats. But yeah, we'll see.
I'll be shocked if they hit 0, but I think 4 is a generous guess. I have 3 more leaders on this resignation draft, and they're all actually pretty out there guesses. Well, the first one is only just because he's not even the leader of a party, but Charles Millard.
Really fun.
I think it's reasonable to assume that he wins, he loses the election, he goes. But I also think if he turns around their fortunes and gets... Remember, 2022 for the Quebec Liberals was abysmal. That was not a good election for them. They got 4th in the popular vote and only stayed official opposition because they have a lock on Montreal.
Yeah,
So
I think if as long as Charles Miard becomes leader, and he does better than the 2022 performance by 10%, I think he can probably stay on. And 10% is really lowballing it because that's actually worse than their current polling numbers.
his only issue, and I think the Rit like Eric Grenier and J. Fournier were talking about this, is I feel like he wants to run somewhere rural. There's something about where he wants to run for a seat, because you have to remember they have incumbents in Montreal,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just if he runs somewhere rural, what are the odds he actually wins a seat?
That would be a risk.
Granted, that's not always a key factor. Like you can be a party leader and not have a seat. Pierre lost his seat in the federal election and just went and found another one. You never know.
Yeah.
This next one is a really out there one, and I'm very curious to see how you react to this. I think I had like more than 5 people write his name down. Francois Blanchet.
I don't see why he would resign, to be honest. Maybe
Well,
if he wants to retire, because he's not a young man, but he's also not that old. I think he's only in his 50s.
I think so, yeah. He's not an old guy. Sure, he's been around for 3 elections, but how many elections was Gilles Duceppe around for? And Blanchet, his only bad election was this one. And this election could have been a lot worse for the Bloc Québécois, given the environment, but it wasn't.
It was tracking to be worse until that debate. He really, what reason why I don't see him going anywhere is the last 3 elections, Blanchet's debate performance pulled the Bloc up at least 3 or 4 seats each election. He's a very strong debater.
In French and in English, yeah. I think, actually.
I don't recall my exact grades, because I gave debate grades a while back during the election. But I think I gave, in English, Blanchet the second highest debate grade. Like and this is not like me rating them based on who says the rhetoric I like or whatever, but like the technical aspects of debating, he's better in English debating than pretty much everyone else in Canadian politics.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree.
And that's the second language too, which is impressive.
Yeah. I remember in 2019 when he got Trudeau to help him with his English on the debate stage, and everyone was still saying he did a good job. Mm-hmm. Like he was like, I specifically remember he was like, I forget the word for this in English, and Trudeau helped him. Like, that is true. That is impressive. Granted, every other party leader does that for the French debates in their second language, and does usually a decent enough job. But still, Blanchet, he is not a drag on the Bloc Québécois by any means, and I don't know who's waiting in the wings to take over the Bloc Québécois. Because again, Blanchet became leader unopposed. There's no people lined up to take over the Bloc Québécois.
Well, to be fair, when he took over the party, they were doing terrible in the polls.
And nothing.
And they had only they didn't have that many seats. I don't recall how many seats they had, but they did not have a lot of seats when he took over.
I think it was 9 because 7 of them joined Quebec Debout for that few weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, my last name on here. And I think her being gone simply means that her party's gone. But Dallas Brody.
Well, allegedly, they're going to have a leadership race, and she may or may not run in the leadership race. And if she does, she may or may not win the leadership race. So that already is a pretty reasonable grounds to assume she might not be the leader at the end of the year.
Yeah, and for all we know, there's a new leader of the Conservative Party who she likes and merges back in. But I think she's burned enough bridges that she isn't going to do that.
Yeah, I think that's unlikely.
Yeah. That's a pretty self-explanatory one. She either will be or she won't be. There's not much speculation there. And for all we know, she won't be, then she will be again 10 days later, just like what happened in December. So, we'll see.
Does that count technically? If she's gone for 10 days and comes back?
I think I'd count it because she's out of her job. She's gone. I mean, sure, it's called a resignation draft, but I'm going to call it gone as leader draft. Because I think based on just how legality works, you do have to formally resign. Aaron O'Toole did formally have to resign as Conservative leader, even when he was voted out. It's just you're not going to stay on if your caucus voted by every legal measure that you're gone. The reason I kept saying that they are stealing my thunder for this next question is because the next one was premiers out of their job. Now, only 5 names were mentioned, and they were Francois Legault, which has already happened, Doug Ford, Bob Moe, Wab Kinew, and Danielle Smith. Now, right off the bat, I don't see how Wab Kinew or Doug Ford are gone. I think we'll both agree there. I don't know how they leave. Legault's already gone. That just leaves Moe and Smith. Is really the only premiers leaving this year Moe and Legault? I think Smith leaving is plausible but unlikely.
The only reason I see Smith leaving is if the
loses.
What's the word for it? The recall petitions. That's the only thing I could think that caused her to leave. Even if she goes into another election, like the odds that she goes to an election and loses seem vanishingly unlikely.
Unless the PCs cause some issues for her, but I don't think. I think like that, these parties get so much hype to begin with, then gradually fizzle out. So
it's very hard to be a third party.
Oh yeah, look at Sask United in Saskatchewan. They had all the hype around them, and then their leader and former leader both failed miserably in their ridings.
Mm-hmm.
So, on this list right now, do you think so? Premiers out of the job. We'll presume that whoever the new premier of Quebec is also going to be out of their job. We don't know who that'll be. That's 2 Quebec premiers gone. Do you think anyone else is gone at the end of the year?
What do you think?
I know you hinted at Moe earlier, but do you think he does quit this year?
I do think there's a chance he quits. I would say now, this year or next year would be the best time if he's going to resign early. But I don't think there's any other premiers that's like Kinew and Ford aren't gonna go. Holt is brand new, doubt it. Wackham just won an election, or Wakeham, so he's not gonna go. Houston's not gonna go. I think he wants to win a 3rd election at least.
Eby, unless he lost an election.
Eby won't go unless he loses an election. So then the only one left would be the guy in PEI. And that could, if they call an election and lose, that could happen. But that would be the only. It would only happen if they call an election, because they have more than enough support seats in Parliament for the legislature to stay in.
Well, they won by a landslide last time.
Yeah.
I did stipulate that, like their current premier's Boyce Thompson, I specified that he doesn't count because he is an interim premier. Even though that title doesn't exist, like it is part of the deal. Boyce Thompson will not be premier in a month. But altogether, like, it's really seeming like it won't be a ridiculously interesting year in provincial politics.
Not unless people want to do snap elections.
Yeah. And even our premiers, which is weird because our premiers don't tend to have a long shelf life. Like Scott Moe's the longest serving premier in Canada, like as of right now, because he took office in February of 2018, whereas Ford took office in June, or he won in June. So Ford and Moe are the longest 2 serving. And then Legault came shortly after.
Then the next longest serving would be
Legault, who's leaving.
And then it'd be Houston. Houston's
really?
After Ford. Yeah.
2021, I guess so, because Smith is new, Wab's new, Eby's fairly new. Yeah. Sheesh. That's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad when, like, your third, ignoring resigned premiers, the 3rd longest serving premier's only been in office for a little over 5 years.
Yeah. Granted, Ford's a special case. I don't think Ford's leaving anytime soon, unless there's a big issue that comes up within his caucus about ties with Pierre, which isn't going to happen, I don't think. Ford is an Imperium.
Yeah, Ford's going to be fine. He has at least until 2028 in my mind. That's the only time he's going to have to start worrying, because that would be when the polls from the new OLP leader might cut into him, but we don't know what that's going to be like. That's like empty speculation at this stage.
Mhm. Yeah, premier's out of their job. That's Legault. Legault's already gone. It really seems like the only one that could go is Premier Mo. But even then, that's not a super duper guaranteed
Yeah.
plausibility. Hmm. So the next thing, you see this one, I'm almost regretting putting this question in, but I think it's worth discussing. Ex-leader of the Conservative Party of BC. I think the responses said were Carrie Lynn Findlay, Carolyn Elliott, and Aaron Gunn, which was said before. Some people must have responded before they heard that Aaron Gunn wasn't going to run. And then, obviously, since then, this has become a crowded race with Yuri Fulmer, Ian Black, Peter Millibar. Sounds like Bruce Banman's in. Yeah, who do you think's going to win? If you had to guess right now, is it even worth guessing right now?
It's not really, because we don't. Some people, like Carolyn Elliott and a little bit Yuri Fulmer, we have a kind of vague idea what the plan of their campaign is. We can probably guess Peter Millibar's campaign pitch, but we don't really have a good vibe of the other ones, at least I don't. There's not been
He's
enough
going to try to.
time for policies and stuff to be said. So it's hard. Because the so the way ranked ballot leadership races work is the person who is the most centrist relative to the party wins. So not centrist as a relative to like all voters, but of people who will
The
vote for
party.
the BC Conservative Party, it will go to the median. This is the one time median voter theory applies properly, because everyone more or less would probably vote for everyone involved here. So the middle person is the most likely one to win. It's not guaranteed. If like let's say Yuri Fulmer is like super popular and gets 50% on the first ballot, he could win even if he's not the center. Like you could argue in the 2022 Conservative leadership race, Poilievre was not the most centrist, like the most middle of the road candidate in the race,
But he was the most ridiculously popular.
but he was the most ridiculously popular. So there's some exceptions to that, but in a race that's this divided with no clear frontrunners, it's going to be the most middle of the road candidate. And my gut feeling with that is it'll probably be Carolyn Elliott, but it really depends on who all shows up and what they
Who gets
campaign
a
on. 'Cause
membership?
we don't really know yet. It's just too early to really have a vibe.
Who's going to sell memberships?
Yeah.
Like as of right now, I'd say Carolyn Elliott because she seems to have the most structured campaign team. Even if who's on her campaign team could hurt her among people who might ask why her entire campaign team is from Ontario. But
Anthony
that's just
Oak
me.
is from Montreal.
True.
And,
Well, I was thinking about Corey Tenike and Jeff Banigal.
yeah,
Yeah, Jeff, he's from Ontario, right? Jeff Ban.
I think so.
Yes. I'm pretty sure. Oh, yeah, because he's Canada proud and he has Ontario proud too. Yes, he's from Ontario. So I think Carolyn Elliott probably has the edge right now, but I'm going to give a hot take right now. Don't underestimate Bruce Banman. Yes, he's a Rustad guy. He's a Rustad guy. But I think he's going to try and appeal as being fairly. He's going to try and appeal as like the most conservative guy in the race, which I think he is right now, assuming he actually runs. And if you want to go off of that, that could be a decent appeal. Because I don't think he's fairly conservative, but I don't think he's like a sloppy-less ostrich guy, if that makes sense.
That's
The
possible.
big stumbling block is going to be Rustad, which is obvious when you're running and your name's Bruce Banman.
The big issue Bruce Banman would have, especially if he goes for that lane. Now, this again, it's going to depend a bit on the campaigns and all that stuff. But what we do know of Carolyn Elliott's positioning is she's taking a very, very, very hardcore cultural conservative stance, and a lot of really big button issues in BC specifically. And I don't know if you can really outdo her on those. Like
That is true. That is true.
like again, maybe Batman has better charisma or will have better phrasing. Like there's things that you can do. It's not just policy, but anyone competing against her can't just naively assume they can out conservative her policy. It's perhaps maybe Carolyn Elliott's too much to the right. Maybe I don't know. But again, we don't have a lot of vibes right now.
The thing that works against Elliott is she is Kevin Falcon's sister-in-law, and the former VP of BC United. Like, that's going to be a stumbling block, in my opinion, almost as much. Not quite as much, actually, but in a similar way to how Bruce Banman's ties to Rustad could be a stumbling block. So if I had to make a guess right now, my guess is Carolyn Elliott, but I think it's going to be, like, literally the 2017 Conservative leadership race, where there's, like, 10 candidates, and it goes to the 9th ballot kind of thing. Like 2020, 10, 11 type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. It's just hard to tell right now. We need more information.
So the next question that came up was the deficit. And most people predicted that the deficit would be higher next year, landing somewhere between the $90 billion and $80 billion range, with some respondents also saying that they thought it would be lower, with people saying anything, and I kid you not, from $75 billion to $565 million. And one good response I liked was someone saying it would be $30 billion as a fiscal reset to call the Conservatives' bluff. Their exact words. You think what do you think?
Deficit's going up. It's going up for sure.
It's going up?
Yeah, there's no incentive to reduce the deficit. People can talk about all they want about the deficit being bad or whatever, but there's no political incentive to cut it because voters don't care. And Carney is a deeply, deeply, perhaps cynical, perhaps very pragmatic man. He's not going to care one iota about the deficit. He's going to spend money giving people things to bribe them, to keep them happy. It might not even be good ways to bribe people. There's bad ways to do it. But he's going to be giving people money to bribe them. Either through cutting taxes, giving them welfare programs, or giving grants to loyalists, which the Liberals do all the time. He's going to spend the money.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that. But is it difficult to defend? Yes. But if deficits were something that needed defending, the Conservatives would have won the 2019 election and the 2021 election and this election. So I'd argue people don't care enough for it to matter.
Yeah.
The next thing was number of federal by-elections. Now, the answers were really varied, with like some people saying 0, even when it became apparent Freeland was resigning, because they think there will be a federal election, which, if that's your thinking, it checks out. But I had like 15% say 1, 11% say 2. The most common guess was like 3. I'd say the range was like 1 to 3. 1 to 3 is over half of the people what they guessed. So that leaves you're going to assume that the Parliament lasts the whole year, or most of the year. B, Carney calls prompt by-elections. And C, Freeland resigns, Matt Generu actually resigns, and then someone else quits. Maybe Nate Erskine-Smith?
I think this question basically boils down to, does the election happen? If the election does happen, there might be one by-election, or there might be
like
0.
Freeland.
Yeah. But I suspect, let's say the election's in February, or sorry, not February, October. I suspect we will get like 2? Freeland and one other.
Yeah.
But if there's no election next year, I do think we actually get like 3 or 4 or 5, because I think there's like 3 or 4 Liberal MPs who want to resign.
Like Trudeau people.
Yeah, like what's his name?
Bill Blair,
and Wilkinson, like a couple of them, I believe, have announced that they plan on resigning at some point. So I think they might all go. And if Carney's not calling an election this year, might as well.
No, that makes sense. So I think I agree. It ultimately comes down to that. And then the next one, which I think matters more than just if you're having by-elections, is how many result in a flip. And the vast, vast, vast majority said 0 to 1. I'm on team 0. The only one I would have said 1 with was had Aaron Gunn resigned, because I think there was a real chance that the NDP could flip that. But I think the only plausible flip, because I don't think any of the seats Liberal seats that might come open are really flippable. Unless the Liberals flip Matt Generou's seat, assuming he does actually quit, then there's none really out there. And I don't think flipping Edmonton Riverbend is something the Liberals should be banking on. I think it's possible if the polls are bad for the Conservatives. But I think Pierre, him specifically, would not let that happen because he knows how that would reflect on him.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 0-2. Like, you're right. The only one at the moment that we're looking at, like with Wilkinson and Blair and Freeland and Genru, and there's another one that I can't think of the name of who's allegedly going to resign.
Jolie? I want to say it was Jolie that people were speculating.
Maybe it was Jolie, but all the Liberal ones are in pretty safe ridings. Like Wilkinson's, like historically his riding is vaguely competitive, but it's not presently vaguely competitive, so that seems unlikely to me.
With the NDP dead, it's not competitive.
Yeah, but for Genru, like the thing we have to keep in mind is 2025 was the best performance the Liberals have had in Edmonton Riverbend precincts, because obviously that riding's only existed for so long, but that was one of their best performances, and even a minor NDP rebound of like 2% nationally should make it impossible for them to win, because they couldn't win it with an almost dead NDP. So any rebound should make it out of possibility, unless the Conservatives truly implode. But the polls are not suggesting that they're doing bad in Alberta. Even the polls like Liaison that have the Conservatives at like 35% right now still have the Conservatives at like 60-something in Alberta. And it's, in Liaison's case, it's Saskatchewan, Manitoba, BC, and Ontario that are causing the Conservative numbers to collapse. None of which makes sense, but...
Yeah, well, Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Manitoba, maybe. I hate that they group it together, because I think grouping Alberta and Saskatchewan makes more sense, just because Winnipeg has a lot of big cities.
Saskatchewan
has one big city.
Yeah, Saskatchewan and Alberta vote more closely together than Saskatchewan and Manitoba do.
Yeah, so that I've never understood why they group them together.
It's just a sample size thing, because
Ontario,
Manitoba and Saskatchewan individually are almost too small of a sample for a 1,000-person poll. That's
true. If Ontario was falling, though, and that's some concern for the Poilievre team, but still, Ontario falling, that doesn't affect Generou's by-election. I think Generou, I think that seat is fine for the Conservatives if they aren't stupid, as long as they pick a candidate who can actually win, and don't pick, like, it's not a by-election where you can throw in, like, a Jenny Byrne friend, basically, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah, they can't pull off the shenanigans they did with Oxford's by-election a couple years back.
That's what I was hinting at. But they can also, they don't have to worry about it, is kind of my thing, as long as they actually try. Because I think the Liberals will try. They want to keep acting like there's some big Alberta Liberal rebound coming. That's just them. On the topic of Alberta, this is my last one before we get into general predictions. What percent does separation get in the 2026 Alberta referendum? Most numbers were in the 25 to 30 range, with the higher guesses closer to 40, and the lower guesses saying around like 20% or lower. One person said 6-7. I don't know if that was just a meme or if that's actually what they think. Yeah, altogether, I think that's about what I think it'll be, assuming this referendum doesn't make it on the ballot, which seems fairly likely. I don't know, I think 30% is optimistic.
I think 30% is the floor.
You think it's the floor? I won't disagree.
All the polls right now show independents, including my own, at around 30% support. Now, mind you, my poll's half a year old at this point, but still, about 30% support for independence right now. And it's likely a campaign, even if everything's above the board and honest, will increase that number, because what's to put it?
I think they can make the case that they're sending a message to Ottawa more than voting against Canada.
Yeah. And there's also going to be a lot of people who might be willing to vote for independence in that kind of vein as kind of like a thumb their nose at Ottawa who don't believe it's going to happen. Like, that did actually, in fact, happen with the Brexit referendum. A lot of people voted for it who were thumbing their nose at London, but they didn't expect it to actually win.
That is true. Okay. Well, so if you had to guess right now, would you say above or below 40?
Below 40.
And if that's,
I think 35.
you think 35?
Yeah.
I think a little bit lower than 35, but I think I'll say this: I wouldn't be shocked if it was at 35 or above.
Yeah. There is a non-zero chance, especially if shenanigans happen, that it could go above 50. I don't think we should discount it. I think if a referendum is
I don't
tabled,
disagree.
people should treat it as if it could succeed.
Well, anytime there's a referendum on the future of your country, you should act like this is a big deal. If any government that doesn't is not a good government. But I think it all depends on what the polls and the general attitude looks like. If the attitude is the Liberals are guaranteed another majority, and that's going to happen forever, then I could see that going above 42. Because people are going to be like, well, what's the point if Eastern Canada is going to vote against us forever? I speak as a Westerner who's a conservative when I say this. But if the polls are like, okay, we're ahead again, kind of, we think we can pull this off election-wise, then expect to see it not do that well, I think. It's all going to depend how people are feeling in October. And for all we know, what if Pierre's the Prime Minister in October? It's not likely, but it's possible.
It's possible.
I don't know. It is, well, it's not... I shouldn't even say it's not likely. If I agree with your assessment that it's like a 40% chance we have an election and a 50-50 that Pierre wins. Or 50 he loses, whatever you look at.
Mm.
Okay, well, I think we're done with the overall percentages. Now we get to move on into the general predictions. So what I had the people do was at the very end of the form, there was, I think I said you could put 5 or more predictions in about what you think is upcoming. I'm not going over all of them because this is already a long video. I'm not going to make it that long. What I did is I kind of went through and starred the ones that I found interesting. I think you found a few that were interesting, or if you didn't, but you find one while you're looking that's interesting, bring it up. There were a lot about pretty well everything. Some people were saying that Doug Ford's the Prime Minister at the end of the year. Not likely. Some people were saying fairly basic things like the PQ is going to win in Quebec. Then there were some fairly specific ones that are worth talking about. For instance, one that I'll bring up is, let me find it. A major cabinet shuffle will occur with both Gary and Sangri and Lena Diab out of their jobs. I think that's very likely. Those ministers are not representative of the government I think Carney wants to present to Canadians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel there will be a shuffle this year, I'm guessing.
I definitely think there will be a shuffle. It's pretty much guaranteed.
Do you have a prediction in front of you, or do you just want me to go through this?
Just go through some of your top ones. None of them struck me as big.
Yeah, no, I'll agree. There weren't any that were like, oh my goodness, this is huge. Most of them were either fairly trolly and not worth the light of day. But I'm just looking over the ones that are decent discussion points. So, another one is Carolyn Mulroney runs for a federal seat with the Conservatives in the 2026 election. Does Carolyn Mulroney have a reason to leave Ford's caucus?
I don't think so. I think she's angling to trying to be a replacement when Ford
For Pierre?
retires.
For Ford or for Pierre?
For Ford.
I'd agree with that. I think it's kind of her long-term game.
Because,
remember, she started off trying to beat Ford in the leadership race.
Ford, he's quite successful, but he's already been in for won 3 elections. Eventually, he's going to retire. Is he going to go for a 4th? A 5th? Even if he goes for a 5th, Carolyn Mulroney will still be fairly young. And if she's been an
Yeah, she's not
cabinet
old
minister,
at all, is she?
I don't think she's that old. I'll double check, but she'll have been a cabinet minister all that time. Like she'll be a pretty big bet for a replacement.
Like if she runs, I think she clears the field. Even if it was right, especially if it was right now, you get some more experience. I could see like a SoCon challenger to her, but that's it, really.
Yeah, yeah. She's 51 right now, so like, even if Ford contests the 2029
She's
election,
51.
she's 51. Yeah, she looks very good for
That's older.
51.
That is like not what I was going to guess at all.
Yeah, but even if Ford does contest 2029 and then retires in like let's say 2031, she's still only 57. She's not that old. There's no
Not at all.
no reason why she couldn't run again. So I think that's her jockeying. I don't really see her running federally because I don't see a path to her winning federally. As an MP, maybe, but not as a leadership contender.
Not as prime. I think, again, you and me have talked about this before. I think there's some appeal to someone like her leading a federal party. I think there's an appeal out there for a conservative female leader in general, but I think you and me have different theories about the role of identity politics in Canada. So that's not really something, that's not the point of this video. But I do agree she'd have difficulty winning over the party, or winning over the leadership of a party that has some issues with her old party to begin with.
I think maybe I'm getting a wrong vibe from her provincial politics stuff, but I just vibe her as too much to the center, and I don't think it's possible for anyone to the left of O'Toole to actually win a leadership race. At least, sorry, to the left of how O'Toole campaigned in 2020 to win a leadership race.
Another one that came up. Danielle Smith makes an unholy alliance with Quebec separatists in the Parti Québécois and pushes for Alberta sovereignty. No, I don't think she's going to push for a successful referendum the same way. I think she's going to approach it like David Cameron, which could be the death of her as it was for David Cameron. But if she handles it right, she could weather the storm pretty good. I think she'll let a referendum happen, say it's a citizen's initiative. We have laws around this, but still posture as saying we're better off being part of Canada. And that's what she's doing right now in making deals with Mark Carney.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
You could see an unholy alliance, or you could see her taking the Brexit positioning.
The unholy alliance is also not impossible, but the catch there is it would require like independents to be really strong. Like if it starts polling north of 40%, or God forbid north of 50%, I could see her jumping on the bandwagon.
Like saying, I'm fine with us leaving.
Yeah. Like if it looks like a done deal, I don't see Smith as the premier who's going to fight tooth and nail to stay in Canada if it looks hopeless.
I agree. No, I agree with that. You have to remember who her base is. And
her
like,
base,
if you want to break it down, if you want to break it down, her base, if a referendum happens, at least half of her party is voting to leave Canada. If you think just how much of the vote she won last time.
Well, what it basically boils down to is the people who are going to vote to leave Canada are going to be the Conservatives in Alberta. I would hazard to guess there's going to be an 80%, if the referendum succeeds, that is, there's probably like an 80% correlation between 2023 Danielle Smith voters and referendum voters. Might be 90% correlation.
Oh, I agree. No, I 100% agree. It all depends on how much the morale of the Conservatives. Because I think Prairie Conservatives with very low morale about the future of Canada are separatist. Ones who are optimistic, maybe even ones who are kind of happy with Carney, like think he's a professional or whatever. Those are the ones who are like, oh no, I'm chill with staying in Canada. I just think we should get a better prime minister. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, unless do you have something else to say to that?
No.
Okay. David Eby will have the same thing happen to him that happened to Rustad once he makes the NDP upset so much and the Conservatives rebound under their new leader, who has a fresh start to attack them.
No.
But I don't think the NDP is usually a rebellious group of people.
The NDP is not going to coup a leader like that. It's more likely, albeit vanishingly unlikely, that EB goes the same way as John Horgan and somehow gets cancer and resigns, than the NDP to overthrow him or force him out.
I would agree. Mark Sutcliffe and Olivia Chow lose re-election.
Does Toronto have elections this year?
I'm pretty sure they do. Remember, Olivia Chow was a by-election.
Oh, you're right. It was a by-election. In which case, there's a good
I didn't realize
chance.
Ottawa had one, though.
There's a good chance. I think all municipal elections in Ontario go at the same time.
Yes, you're right. Yes, that's true.
There's a good. I have no idea about Sutcliffe. Couldn't even tell you a guess. I think there's a good chance Chow loses, but the catch is the quote-unquote municipal right has to be unified. Chow only won because it was disunified and voted for like 3 different candidates in the by-election.
When it was closer because they united more around Anna Bagel than people thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
Sutcliffe, I can't tell you anything. I don't know anything about the guy.
Couldn't tell you a single thing that he has done as mayor. That's how important Ottawa is to Canada.
Sheesh. Some Liberals will cross the 4 to the NDP. No. I don't think the NDP takes 4 crossers.
I don't think they do. And
Granted, I think that principle, if it was a good posturing thing, falls apart. But
so the catch here is the NDP will not take, especially if Avi Lewis wins, will not take anyone who voted for the memorandum or anyone who supported the memorandum with the pipeline, and probably won't take anyone who's ever said anything anti-Palestine. So that really, even like vaguely. So I think that really
I would
cuts the number of people who could cross.
Like I would say Guilbeault could cross, but they all explicitly said we're not taking him in that debate. Which is kind of... And the reason I say Guilbeault could cross is because he could win his seat as an NDPer.
Yeah.
Like, he came close in 2021, if my memory serves me correct. He came close to winning his seat as an NDPer.
Did he run as an NDPer?
No, the NDP came close to picking him off.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh my, that came out really bad. No. The NDP almost picked him off, though. They almost won. They almost beat him. Yeah, no, he never ran as an NDPer. He was a Liberal minister.
2021 was close. And with the incumbency on his side and Liberals in a bit of disarray and like the region it is, there's a chance he could win as the NDP right now there on his own merit as a candidate.
One thing I will say about Avi Lewis is I think he would do the best in Quebec. Like, I think he could take back Ruth Ellen Brosseau's riding. I think he could take back some Montreal seats. Because you look at the debate, he spoke the best French by a mile. He can articulate himself in French. I think him versus Manchette in the French language debate would be interesting.
I don't disagree, though I will say I think every single person on the NDP leadership race right now would do better than Singh in Quebec.
That is very true. Very true.
I think in Quebec, an actual, literal empty suit would have done better than Singh in Quebec.
I won't disagree.
Like a literal empty suit. I don't mean like a person with no personality. I mean like an actual suit that has no one in it.
Again, don't disagree. Like,
for your viewers who are not as familiar with me, I've been ripping on Singh for 5 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, and the fact that they never... Honestly, the behavior of the NDP in the last 2 parliaments has been bizarre. Like,
yeah,
the fact that they never toppled Trudeau when they could have got official opposition and doubled their seat count. The fact that they tied themselves to a sinking ship, quite literally, and the fact that after Singh lost them half their seats, the caucus didn't even consider a revolt. Singh wasn't a good. He has very net negative effect on that party that they might never recover from.
He is the worst federal politician in decades, if not ever.
The worst part is he didn't have to be just a rebellious liberal backbencher. He chose to. He signed an agreement that I will be a rebellious liberal backbencher.
Yup. It's really embarrassing.
Yeah. Anyway, does my renegotiation collapse?
It's possible.
Does it all collapse? Carney go home early? Possible. Again, you see though, to guess that you have to claim to be able to predict Trump. Nobody can predict Donald Trump. Donald Trump does what Trump feels.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't think there's much chance that it collapses. I think it's much more likely that the Canadians fold.
That we also have to remember, it seems like this isn't, I'm gonna take my own politics out of this for a sec. It really seems like Carney and Trump get along. For all of the media, for all the everything, it really, you'd think they would have had like some lick of confrontation in public when, if they had some sort of dislike towards each other. They seem to get along. Even Trudeau was like, they were all smiles, and Trudeau was caught on tape making fun of him and his team. Trump and Carney seem to like get along on a personal level, at least. I think their rise to power is similar, if that helps.
Yeah, I mean, like, Trump has always liked the international banking class, which Mark Carney is a part of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a shock. And I don't think it was cynical. And I don't think it was like some kind of weird power game move when Trump endorsed Carney in the last election. I think he did that genuinely because he prefers Carney over Poilievre.
I think Carney makes it easier for him to achieve his objectives.
I don't even think that matters. I think Trump likes Mark Carney as a human being more than he likes Pierre Poilievre as a human being.
I could see that. Again, no one can tap into the brain of Donald Trump. And on the topic of Trump, actually, here's the next thing. The GOP, oh my goodness. The GOP will lose the midterms handedly, forcing the electorate to focus on domestic issues and hurting the Liberal polling numbers. Senate appointments will become almost explicitly partisan to ensure the passage of Liberal legislation. Maybe a Liberal caucus is reinstated in the Senate, and the Carney government comes out against Aboriginal challenges to a simple fee land ownership. That's a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Let's break that down. First of all, do you think the GOP is losing the midterms handedly?
No. Right now, it's not even entirely clear if they'll lose the Senate. They might even gain seats in the Senate. It's kind of hard to say this far out. But
it'd have to. The Senate is theirs, I think.
The generic congressional ballot across all polls range from like D+2 to D+6. That's not like wipeout territories. And if, as expected, Clarence Thomas drops the majority opinion to gut Section 2 of the Voter Rights Act, and states like Florida jump on that to gerrymander, it could be very difficult, even with the Democrats winning the popular vote, to win enough seats to matter. Because, like, in the U.S.
You mean to flip the House?
In the U.S., congressmen have more latitude to do whatever the hell they want. I'm sorry if you're not allowed to swear on your channel, but anyways.
No, it's fine.
They have more latitude to do what they want than Canadian MPs do. So if you have like a 5-seat majority in the House, that's not a very strong majority in the House. That's a very strong majority in Canada, actually, but it's really weak in the U.S. because the MPs will use that leverage to bully the rest of the caucus to do what they want.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, look at what they did to Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah.
No, I think they I'd be shocked if the Democrats didn't win the House, even if it's only by 5 seats. Just that's what happens in midterms. I don't think that this person's theory is obviously, okay, Trump can't do anything anymore, so we have to worry about our own stuff. Trump is still going to tweet. Trump is still going to say outrageous things that make CBC lose their mind.
Well, if the U.S. even more than that, if the Republicans still control the Senate, especially if they replace someone like Murkowski with someone more party line in Alaska, especially they gain Michigan, which is possible. And there's another state too that they have a decent. Oh, New Hampshire. They might be able to gain New Hampshire. That's a non-zero chance. It's not likely right now, but it's like in the ballpark of possible. Like let's say they gain 2 seats and replace Murkowski with a much more strident senator. I think it's Murkowski who's retiring. I could be wrong on that one, but it doesn't matter. If that were to happen, which is not impossible, that actually makes Trump a lot more, gives him a lot more power. Like, yeah, they don't have the House anymore, sure, but judicial appointments, the Senate can block all bills the Congress wants to do, or the House of Representatives wants to do. So you can't remove Trump's tariff powers. You can't do stuff like this. You can't. The Senate reconfirms treaties and or vetoes treaties, so you can't count on the Senate to do things with that. The Senate's a much more important house to control in the U.S. Like, yes, they can't make money bills, but if there's a Republican president and a Republican Senate, then there's not a lot of latitude the Democrats have to pass a money bill. So the budgets in 28 and 29, or 27 and 28, will be compromised kind of gross budgets with probably some government shutdowns involved. But that's it. It won't be a big rebuke of Trump. It won't really shut him down because most of what he's doing is executive powers.
Mm-hmm.
And
again, that's not gonna, the stuff that is causing people to go all, where the media to go all crazy is not going to be affected by who controls the House of Representatives.
Yeah. And after this year, assuming the money bill passes this year, Trump will have done most of whatever he could possibly wanted to do in money bills.
True. So I think that idea is, so polling numbers, I still think if Trump is handicapped even a bit, I think at the end of the day, the Canadian media at some point has to get sick of running stories about an American president. Maybe they won't. I think they won't.
You were young. You were a young man when Trump was first in office. They never got tired. There was 4 years of this. Not at the same level of degree, but they still talked about it for 4 years.
I think that is true. I think that, and also people might be blinded. Maybe I have too much faith in the average Canadian voter, but I do think people might care a bit more about their house getting invaded in the middle of the night than what Orange Man down south says. But again, maybe I just have too much faith in the Canadian voter. I don't know. So that becomes, Senate appointments become explicitly partisan to ensure passage of Liberal legislation. They already are fairly partisan. Like, that is a real concern if Pierre gets in. What if the Senate becomes an issue? Because it is stacked with Laurentians.
The Senate has always been partisan. Anyone who tries to tell you that appointments are nonpartisan is selling you something.
They're always rewarding They're always rewarding a friend. Do they actually block stuff? No. But do they gut bills? Yes. Like, they gutted that opposition private members bill.
Yeah.
And then Carney comes out against Aboriginal challenges to simple fee. Carney's not touching Indigenous stuff.
No,
that's a distraction.
I think he
might. You think he will? I think that's a distraction for him.
I think so. He's gonna do it because he's gonna get tired. Because Carney's not the kind of guy who likes to play footsie with stuff. I think he's gonna get really sick and tired of the First Nations blocking. And it's not, to be clear, it's not all of them, and it's not even most of them. It's like a fringe minority of them, but just blocking everything all the time. I think he's going to get tired of it.
You think so?
Yeah. Because it's going to undermine his ability to do anything. Like right now, he's kowtowing to the quote-unquote coastal First Nations group, but I don't think that's long for this world. Because if you can't build a pipeline through BC or a pipeline through Quebec, you basically shut down the best infrastructure investment we could possibly do to increase our economy. Because just the ability to sell more gas or oil to the Tidewater would increase the value of all of our oil we sell.
But I think that leads to the question of, does Carney actually want a pipeline?
Yes. I don't think he's going to go fight for it as hard as Poilievre would, but he wants it because if he got it done, it would undermine half the case to vote for Poilievre.
True, but think about how much of his caucus was elected under the climate change prevention Liberals with Trudeau. I think sure undermines the case, but I think that sends people back to the NDP.
I think he will take that risk.
Well, we'll have to see. I think it's possible, but not 100%. Yeah, I have two more. Oh, sorry, you talk. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, it's not 100%. I agree with that, but I think it is much more likely than it's not that he's going to try. But it won't be the way he's going to do it. Is it won't be overt, right? Like, it's going to be a lot. A lot of this stuff is going to be through very technocratic backdoor things and legislation. Likely. Because he's a banker. He's used to doing technocratic things in the shadows to get his way. That's what he's going to do.
Don't disagree. Again, I think you and me disagree on how willing he actually is to have a pipeline happen. But I think we'll see. Okay, I have two more things that we're going to cover, then we're going to wrap it up. First thing, CAQ will keep at least 3 seats, defying expectations.
No. Not unless they get a unicorn.
Do they need a unicorn or just someone vaguely competent?
They could run the best thing... Not the best thing. That'd be a unicorn. They could run a perfectly adequate guy and... So, like, okay, the problem that CAQ has isn't even that Legault is unpopular and is dragging down the party. That's a problem. Their problem is more fundamental than that. They don't really have a good pitch to voters anymore because Legault's autonomous plan failed. His pitch to voters was, we can have our cake and eat it too, and they can't have their cake and eat it too. They're getting the immigration and all the other negative things that the federal government's doing. And they just get a tiny bit of autonomy to do slightly different things, but nothing consequential, nothing that really controls their thing. And the immigration
they got their secularism stuff through. They got their immigration.
They didn't get the immigration. That's one of the reasons why he's crashing.
Didn't they get something? Some deal?
They passed some bills about
yeah.
Like Bill 21 and stuff, but like that.
The
best way to phrase it, that's like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. Like, yeah, I guess it helps, but the underlying thing the electorate wants isn't being achieved.
Legault got everything he could do done. Is the thing. Like, people wanted secularism stuff passed. He got it passed. Why should I still vote for you? Am I going to vote for you for the next 20 years because you did something I like once? And Quebec voters already are very willing to ditch their old party for someone else. I think I think they're just going to have to pick what they like best about CAQ. If they like that they're vaguely fiscally conservative, maybe kind of, they're going to go PCQ. If they like that they're autonomous, they might just take that extra step and go PQ. If they like that they're, I don't know, some of them might go liberal. Dominic Anglade went liberal. Like, it is possible. Like, altogether, I'm going to say no. They're three is their ceiling. Especially, like, if Legault isn't going to win his seat because he's not running. If he's not running, he's not winning a seat. If they're losing their incumbency advantage in everywhere where they could win, AQ 0 seats is very possible. Probably likely.
Yeah.
Okay. Last one. Agerskin Smith will be elected OLP leader, or at minimum be in the lead for such position at the end of 2026. I don't know who else is going to run, so I'm going to say sure.
I don't know who else is going to run, but I think no. I don't
You think
mind.
no?
What I understand of the OLP is they hate him, and they will do every possible thing in their power to rig it so he can't win.
Well, I know, like, for instance, Warren Kinsella hates Nate. I know, like, because he always says, like, or he tweeted the other day that him winning would be the death of the party for another century or decade. I still think he came so close in 2020. Granted, the fact that he didn't win against Crombie maybe shows, because Crombie was not a strong leader. She was just, you either get Nate or you get this. There is merit to what you're saying.
Hmm.
Don't get me wrong, but I just think if Nate's going to organize and he's a vaguely decent communicator, sure. But again, who knows? Maybe the only other guy I could see maybe beating him is Tyler Watt if Tyler Watt runs. I don't even know if he said anything about it though. Just trying to think for new MPs or new MLAs, sorry. Oh, MPPs, new MPPs that might be semi-appealing to the OLP people.
I think it's going to be someone out of caucus who wins it. Either
Out of caucus? In caucus or out of...
out of it. It's either Nate or some other third person who's gunning. We don't know who they are yet, but I still think
You're not an MP.
I still think they're going to do everything in their power to make it so that he can't win.
So you think if he does win, that's just a civil war ensues?
Maybe.
Interesting. Okay. Well, anything else you want to say to that?
No, that's...
Anything else you want to say to, like, anything in the last 2 hours?
I think we've covered a lot.
We have covered a lot. This took a lot longer than I thought it would, but I think people are going to look at the timestamps and go to where they are interested in, and it's going to be great.
Yes.
So, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Bagel, for joining me. It was very nice to have your insights, your expertise. Make sure you guys go fill out his poll when I link it. I'm going to link it in a pinned comment and in the description. So go fill it out, please. Anything you want to say in closing, Bagel?
Hope you guys all have a wonderful week.
Oh, nice. Well, thanks again for joining me. This was nice. Go subscribe to Bagel's channel if you aren't subscribed. He does a good job if you like long form commentary like this. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day and see y'all later.